Welcome back to Raised by Giants Illuminated Insights Discussion episode of the week, and I'm really excited about this show on an amazing Saturday evening. We are live. Welcome everyone in the chat, moderators, everyone. Good to see you guys. And a reminder, super chats and super stickers are available. Also, PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description as well, and are a great way to help support my work and help support the show. And a big thank you to everyone that's contributed to help support the show. Really appreciate each and every single one of you. Couldn't do it without you. But really looking forward to this discussion we have today. He's been on the show several times before. He's been employed by the FBI and the Air Force as a special agent. He's an author, researcher, writer, investigator, Walter Bosley. Welcome back to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, how you doing, Ryder? Great. It's good to be here. I enjoy talking with you. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I think the last time you were on was that roundtable discussion that we had with Dr. David Morehouse and Kathy O'Brien, which was a very interesting show. If people haven't watched that one yet, please check that one out. That was a really good one. But the reason that I wanted to bring you on here today is because there's a lot of things going on within the UFO community. And apparently you can just be a whistleblower no matter what's going on. You can just have stories told to you and you can be classified as a whistleblower. I could be a whistleblower, Walter.
Yeah,
I've listened to YouTube videos all the time. I've gotten all kinds of information. I can be a whistleblower, right?
Yeah, of course. I recall during my federal agent days that there were distinct, what's the word? Distinct qualifications to be considered a whistleblower. Now you just, use the word, just bandy it about and call yourself one and talk out of school and say, well, I'm a whistleblower.
Yeah, you just call yourself a whistleblower and then automatically that means that you're a whistleblower. But I thought being a whistleblower meant that you would have to have some kind of classified information, right? You would have to have some kind of documentation, some kind of proof of what you're whistleblowing about, right?
And you'd have to have a whistle to blow. A lot of whistleblowers, it's baloney that they're blowing.
Yeah. And it's really interesting too, because did you watch the congressional hearing?
Yeah, the big nothing.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, I watched it and it was a big nothing.
Yeah, and that Koresh, I'm still confused about how to say his name. He sounds like David Koresh. Koresh. Yeah. Sounds very similar to the Waco cult leader in 93, David Koresh. But Koresh, he gets up there and he's just talking about things that has been talked about in the community for decades now.
Yeah.
And then whenever he's asked to provide, proof for what he's talking about, he's like, oh, behind closed doors, I can tell you about that. And we're going to bring up some clips from this.
And then my understanding is when he does finally get them behind closed doors, they come out and say, this was nothing. This guy doesn't know, this was nothing. He had nothing, to offer. And the spinners in the community still, they'll either deny that happened or they'll say, well, of course they're saying that is no, that. And that's what we're faced with. The community is enough loud voices just denying, that the facts are the facts. And they think if they deny it loud enough and long enough, then the facts will go away. The truth will go away. And their version will prevail.
Is there such thing as a classified testimony? Is that something that's real? Because that's where he claimed in the congressional hearing that he got his information from classified testimony. So in other words, he's just getting his information from storytellers, people just telling him stories that don't have any proof. There's no evidence. And he was asked several times about the alien bodies that which he's reclassified all the terms, right? It's not aliens, it's non-humans, it's biologicals.
Yeah.
Right? It's like biologicals. Sometimes there's biologicals that comes along with these crash retrieval craft. And then the lady's like, the congresswoman's like, what do you mean by biologicals? You mean non-human biologicals or human biologicals? And he's like, non-human biologicals. It's really weird, dude. It's really weird.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's plenty of reason to question wherever he does specify something otherworldly, where he does say non-human biologicals. Well, again, that's something he's getting from someone else. It's not something that he, can confirm himself is the case. And so if they won't accept that from other people, in the community, as it should be questioned, why are they accepting it from him? Well, because right now the trend is, anybody who is with the military, they wouldn't lie to us, trust me, bro, kind of thing. There's a term out there, vet bros. These are the guys who, if somebody's a veteran, then you can't question them. Oh man, you're going to question a vet. He's a veteran, man. Well, hey, I'm a veteran, and I call these guys BS artists, and just because somebody is a military veteran doesn't mean that they're not capable of being a BS artist. I tell people all the time, why do you think jobs like mine, like I had, exist in the military? Because there are lying, frauds and criminals, unfortunately, that end up in the ranks of the military. That's why the Army has Criminal Investigation Division, the Navy has NCIS, and the Air Force has Air Force OSI, is because there are active duty people who commit crimes, including murders and lots of fraud and this, that, and the other, and treason and everything. So, just because somebody is or has been in the military, and they might be able to produce a DD-214 or other credentials to prove they're in the military. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of besmirching or ruining whatever respect they could get from honest military service through dishonest actions and behavior. But the vet bros, they circle the wagons, and when you question someone who's a former military member or current military member, that's if they can't argue against what you point out, they circle the wagons and say, oh, how dare you insult and not believe a military veteran.
Yeah, and something that I found really interesting, which is something that they always do in any of these hearings, right?
Yeah,
they always throw out two military people, and if you look how they're positioned in this lineup, it goes Ryan Graves, right, which is a military that saw all the military tic tac and all that, and then you have David Grush, which is the new whistleblower, right in the middle. He's up next, and then you have the other guy, what's his name? Fravor, Captain Fravor, or Lieutenant
Commander
Fravor. Commander
yeah.
Fravor, right to the next. And the first thing that they knock out of the park almost immediately is a question about our technology, right? They have to disprove that it's our technology right out the gate. And that's what they do every single time.
Because that's exactly what it is when you're talking about the tic-tac. So they have to eliminate that up front. In other words, let's not talk about what it most likely is. That's not on the table, and there's a lot of people who will fall for that.
Yeah, and they do that so that they can install the extraterrestrial hypothesis that this technology is coming from off of our planet, that it's not our technology. And that's the first thing that they did. And that's the first thing that Ryan Graves basically says. The first question is, do you know of any technology that the military has that this could be? And then he says, oh, I'm not aware of any technology. Well, you wouldn't be aware, right? You wouldn't have the need to know about any of that technology that we might be developing.
There you go. I mean, I respect Commander Fravor for his, service as a naval aviator, of course. But, when I first heard him say, well, if it was ours, I'd know about it. I mean, I'm sorry. If I was having a beer with the commander, I'd say, sir, because he outranks me. I'd say, sir, come on, Dave. Commander Dave, you know better than that nonsense, because you hit the nail on the head. I don't care. A squadron commander whatever, in his position is not going to be in the position to know everything that's out there being developed and tested. I'm sorry. And he knows better than that. And I think it's, to me, it's clear that there's a lot of wink. His demeanor to me is, okay, you other military guys that know better, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm doing my job here. Okay. But there are people in the community who will say, well, he must know, right? He's a squadron commander, a Navy fighter pilot. Well, no, I'm sorry, folks. Just like you said, if you don't have the need to know, you ain't going to know it. And yes, I got into big arguments with a couple of people, when this Tic Tac thing first came out, and they said, there's no way they would test anything on our people. I'm like, are you kidding me? They do it all the time.
Just look at the MK Ultra programs. They were testing.
Yeah, bingo. And why would they show off technology like that's being developed to our personnel without our personnel knowing it? Because you want an honest human reaction, And then I point out they weren't armed. Their aircraft were not armed. It was a common sortie, that they weren't armed, so there was no threat of them popping off missiles or firing their guns if they had kind of an overreaction to it. And people were talking about it as if you could be standing, on Coronado Island at the Hotel Del having your Mai Tai on the beach and watching this happen. No, it wasn't anywhere near eyesight of downtown San Diego. It was out at sea and pretty far south. It was more level with Baja. Okay, so, and it was in a part of the ocean that specifically is known to be where the DoD tests all sorts of stuff, and the Navy controls a couple of those islands there. So it checked all the boxes for being our technology being tested on our people. There's been some exaggeration on the performance of the things, but people want to believe what they want to believe, and what the government's doing is they're playing the leverage they have on the vet bro kind of people. It's like, oh, hey, wait a minute, we'll put these guys out there, and there's just enough people in the UFO community, that critical mass, doesn't have to be everybody, just enough people who are just going to buy what these guys say because, by golly, they're veterans. And I'm a veteran myself, so I can use a little mockery in that. Okay, I've earned that.
Well, and it's especially right whenever, because Koresh states several times.
Grush. You don't want to. I mean, the poor guy is nowhere near. At least Grush is a sympathetic character. David Koresh was not.
Grush. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He speaks several times about special access programs,
yes.
And there was a few interesting things that he said about how the special access programs actually get funding, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But then it just lays claim to more that we have absolutely no idea what's really going on, because most of the special access programs aren't being ran directly from our military. They're being ran from private organization, private contractors from the military, right?
So technology SAPs. Yeah, I was in an operational SAP. So that was marching orders from Department of the Air Force, Pentagon.
Yeah, it was just interesting the way that he was talking about how the funding for these SAP programs actually get done. The way that he explained it was, well, he didn't really explain it at all. It was actually came from a lot of the Congress people. He didn't really give any information at all. So, and we're going to see some of that here a little bit later, because we're going to provide some commentary on this. But one of the Congress people that were questioning him basically said, well, what are they doing? Are they overcharging for things and then taking that money to fund some of these special access programs? And that's one of the examples that was given. So that part was kind of interesting, how these special access programs are actually developed and the different classifications of these special access programs. He mentioned a controlled special access program, which is called a CAM, I think, CAM, or something like that. Do you know anything about the controlled special access programs?
Vaguely. I I was affiliated with an SAP, a SAP. And, you weren't really. That was, to be honest, up until the 2016 election, when Hillary Clinton started bandying about the acronym SAP and SAP. That was something most people that had worked in or around SAP's SAPs is how we referred to them. You really kind of didn't throw that out there. Like I had been around this community and been, public with stuff for years, and you never heard me say that acronym. People would say, well, you blah, blah, blah. And I say, yeah, TS, SCI clearance. You heard me talk about tickets, which is how deep and what your level into SCI is. But I would never mention SAP because, my instruction and my understanding was that's something that is a little more sensitive. And I never really heard that bandied about in public that way until that election, and she goes doing that, and now everybody's sap. It's like a forest of trees that you get maple syrup from. There's so many saps out there, but there's different levels of stuff. And again, if you're not, like, I was not involved with one of those to my knowledge, so I can't tell you anything about it because I didn't have a need to know about, other than, the existence. And I try to keep it honest. If there's something I don't know or didn't have access to, I don't try to fudge people. Yeah. And, there's people out there that do that for social leverage and relevance in this community.
Absolutely, all the time. Just like we were mentioning earlier with the whistleblower thing. Everyone can be a whistleblower now. I think that started with the secret space program, super soldier people that were claiming to be a secret space program whistleblower with their own fantastical testimony of advanced technology.
With their lies. They're lies. Let's call it what it is. Fantasies and lies. IP. Remember what he said in the particular guy said in his deposition that it's just his IP. He's never been in space.
Yep.
Anyway, I digress.
That is exactly right. Yes, sir. But there was I recently watched the entire thing, and I was basically just rolling my eyes in the back of my head, this congressional testimony.
Yeah.
It was, I don't understand how it even got to that point. Like how this guy, and he claims to be that he's only been a whistleblower for like 2 months now, and then he's pushed out in front of the public in this congressional. It just makes absolutely no sense. And then you have Jeremy Corbell sitting right behind him.
Yeah, that should be a big red flag for you right there as to how serious this is. Not.
And then he's talking about these stories that he's heard people say. It's exactly like that. I think that Canadian gentleman, I think it was a Canadian congressman, that was talking about how there were several ET races visiting Earth that he heard from YouTube. And then there was a congressman or somebody, a high up official from Israel, that said that there was 25 different extraterrestrial races visiting Earth. Yep. And then it turns out that he heard that from his daughter, that heard that from Laura Eisenhower on YouTube. And then he just repeated it.
There's a source.
It's just a regurgitated nonsense.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is when you look more closely at things, you invariably find, oh, there we go. Okay. But here's the problem. We've got a critical mass. What does that mean? That means just the right effective number to have impact on the discussion, on the direction of where the community goes, right? You don't need everybody. You need just enough people. Now, when you're in a community that is going to have a fair percentage of what are essentially newbies, just keep processing through at any given time, and increasingly newbies are less and less interested in what's come before. Why should I study the history of what's come before in ufology? That doesn't matter. What matters is, what I'm seeing now. Well, the yarn spinners, okay, and the fraudsters and the people trying to manage your perception, they take advantage of that ignorance, and they take advantage of that laziness to want to look at the history of ufology and see how many times the same kind of fraudsters come down the pike. Or in the cases of Bob Lazar and Stephen Greer and some of the other ones, the fraudsters that are still with us, the people that have been, properly proven questionable in the past, and they just get dusted off and put out there on the stage again, because there's a whole brand new number of people out there that aren't aware of that, and they don't want to listen to that. They just want to hear the fun stories. It's like the poster in X-Files. They want to believe.
And that is a really big problem. The need and the want to believe in extraterrestrials, and then in turn believing in all of these fake, made up, regurgitated stories that whenever you go back to the source of them, they are false.
Yeah.
And they're not real. Like, I'm doing a whole series right now on these UFO cults, and it's amazing, Walter. I don't know if you studied UFO cults at all during your time.
Bit, yeah.
But literally all of the information that is constantly regurgitated in this community comes from UFO cults. The earliest one being the Seekers cult in 1954. And then you have the Unarius Academy cult, and also in 1954, that with Ernest Newman claiming that he remote viewed Mars, that he was sent there psychically, and he's seen underground caverns and that people live on Mars. Then you have the Alternative 3 material. Are you familiar with the Alternative 3, that fake documentary that was put out?
I bought the book in the late 70s. I saw it on the shelf, and I'm like, oh, what's this? Back when I was, young and just learning stuff. And I'm familiar with Alternative 3.
It is the most wackadoo. But the thing about it is that documentary and that book was presented as real. It was presented as
the funny thing is, let me comment on that documentary. It is clearly obvious to anyone who's not an idiot. Oh my God, he said idiot in the pearl clenching era of our times. The sensitives out there.
I'm triggered, Walter. I'm triggered.
Oh, you're going to get people that are going to say, I hate that guy. I don't like his mockery and his attitude. Yeah, go pound sand. Wake up. Grow up. Okay? Only an idiot would look at the Alternative 3 documentary and see that it was complete fiction. The astronaut that they talked to in there, who's all nervous and drinking and doesn't want to say anything. I wish I could pull him up on the screen here. He was a well-known American actor in the 70s who did a lot of British productions, in specifically the James Bond films. Okay. You can see him in multiple, he's an actor and yet there are people who watch it and say, well, they talked to an astronaut. No, they did not. It was an actor. It was all, it
was a fake made up astronaut.
And it's obvious when you watch it that it's a dramatization. That's all.
And then the book comes out, which the book came out a year after, in 1978. And then that got everybody on the hook, because the person that wrote the book actually included real missing people in the book. And if people aren't familiar with Alternative 3, it's a fiction story where the claims are that people are being the missing people are really being taken to Mars on like Mars colonies, right?
And they're scientists and it's a brain drain kind of thing. And the book was more interesting to me than the documentary. I could see where the book, as I recall, the book could be more convincing, to the non-discerning mind, than the documentary. To me, the documentary makes it obvious. In fact, I had read the book before I saw the documentary. So the book, where it was like, I wonder. And then when I saw the documentary, I'm like, okay, yeah.
The documentary, I think, got people, because at the end of the documentary, it shows a rocket or some kind of craft apparently landing on Mars, and then you see this thing coming up out of the ground and like scurrying it away really quick underground, and then the person behind the camera is like, we have life on Mars. Right? And if people didn't know any better and that documentary is sold as fact, then they're going to take it as real. And that is really where all of this stuff is, especially the secret space program and the super soldier people, that's where all that stuff came out of. That's where it all got born.
It's like the people who took the alien autopsy film seriously, and will to this day swear it was real.
Yep. And There's been a lot of examples of that through just since I've been born. The Blair Witch Project was another one that people got thought was real. Paranormal Activity, the first Paranormal Activity movie, people thought that was real.
Yeah.
You know, and then that really brings in the question: how many things that are being sold as fact are actually fiction?
Right. Yeah. And you know, I want to let me clarify something too, because sometimes when I'm having these discussions and I express how I express about the things that we know aren't real, people think, oh, he doesn't believe in anything. He's just a debunker naysayer. No, folks, there's all sorts of wild stuff that I think is real. Okay. I'm with you. I think extraterrestrials exist, and they do come here to this planet. I think ultra-terrestrials exist. I've had all sorts of paranormal, you know, things that I think are paranormal, you know, happen to me. But I think you'll notice the difference is I know that I can't prove any of my experiences, so I don't present my experiences or myself as, you know, I understand if people, you know, don't believe me. But here's the point I'm making is I think these things are all real, but we have to be very, very careful at what gets presented to us in our community media or by the media at our community, because there's been so much that's fake. Okay. They are the ones making the mockery of us. Okay. Not someone like me who's, you know, kind of being a little dramatic to make a point. Okay. They're the ones making the mockery of us, the ones who do the alternative threes, the ones who do the alien autopsies. Okay. And on and so forth. You know, it's somebody just taking advantage of your willingness to be open to something extraordinary for money. Okay. And that's what I try to point out is instances of that.
Absolutely. And I've had really strange and weird experiences whenever I was younger. I've seen some things that I can't explain, but I don't really care. And I don't claim to know what those things were, right? Because, Walter, if I were to go to somebody, and I've told people about this, you know, several times on the show, it's nothing new, but if I were to go to a, let's say a psychic or somebody in this community and told them whenever I was younger and I was laying in my bed that I saw beings coming out of the walls and surrounding me every night, they're instantly going to jump to the conclusion that I was abducted, that those were gray aliens, they were using some sort of advanced phaser technology, and that I was being experimented on. And then none of that is what happened, right? I just had a weird experience when I was growing up. Right, but they would spin that and they would turn that. Oh, you were being taken to Mars. You were being taken to the moon, and all the experimentation that were taking your DNA and all that nonsense. When none of that happened.
And if you tried to say, well, what about this alternative possibility? No, it can't be that. Well, how do you know that it can't be that? Were you there? Were you facilitating what was happening to me? And you know, that's another issue is the ET hypothesis is so prevalent, and that's an understatement. And I think there you go. See, there are people who have a financial stake in the ET hypothesis. Okay. Take a look at, and I'm not trying to offend the city of Roswell, New Mexico, but go to Roswell. Have you been to Roswell?
No, I have not.
Okay. There's a museum there that's really cool if you ever go there, and they have a great file library that incredible with all, you know, stuff, UFO history. And everywhere in town, there's all sorts of shops selling, you know, ET, Roswell alien stuff. I mean, I have a mug around here. It's usually sitting right here. I have a mug I bought. I mean, you know, it's cool stuff.
The
it's
little
fun.
Alien. Don't they have that
I haven't
hotel?
been there, but you know, it's the Roswell, you know, and of course, you know, it's cool stuff. And of course, the ET hypothesis has some, I think, truth to it. But, you know, you could say that there's, you know, several merchants there who have a stake in the ET hypothesis, right? If suddenly, you know, the community were to say, this ET hypothesis, you know, may not be the answer or whatever, then wow, you know, they wouldn't be selling as many T-shirts, they wouldn't be selling as many tickets to museums. And that's just on the small end. Think of the movie producers and the television producers and, you know, all up and down the spectrum, the books, the publishers. Now, you could argue that if another hypothesis came in to replace it, they would just shift over to that. They would sell T-shirts with ultra terrestrials, right? And and the museum.
Well, that's really
would
what
focus
they've
on
done,
that.
though. Researching all these cults, they all start out as physical extraterrestrials in physical ships that are all surrounding our planet, right? And they all prophesy of a mass UFO landing, and these extraterrestrials are going to come out and save humanity from impending doom, right? Well, when that doesn't work out, they switch it. They turn it into a spiritual thing. They turn it into consciousness. They turn it into spirit beings, and that they're going to ascend to the fifth dimension, right?
Well, it's like religious cults. The second coming. There were a lot of people who believed it was going to be in 2000 and then 2012, right? Some
2001, the Unarius cult claimed the mass landing of UFO ships was going to happen in 2001, and it didn't happen, and that whole thing completely fell apart. The Seekers UFO cult claimed that a mass landing of UFO ships of the Guardian races was going to land in December 21st of 1954. That didn't happen. They pushed that date back, and then it said it was going to be Christmas Eve. That date didn't. And then there's this dude named Leon Fetzinger that infiltrated that Seekers UFO cult and then created the term cognitive dissonance. That's where the term cognitive dissonance comes from, Walter Bosley. It's from infiltrating this Seekers UFO cult in 1954 to study their psychology whenever their predictions didn't come true. He termed that phrase cognitive dissonance from studying that UFO cult.
That's an interesting little tidbit there to know. It's funny how it applies to what it applies to. I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
And then Rael from the Raelian cult, he did something different than a lot of the other cults that came before him and the cults that came after him. He put the mass landing of UFOs so far in the future that by the time that event happens, like, no one's going to care. He's going to be dead. The thing's no longer going to be a thing anymore.
The people he's scamming in his lifetime, now, is he the one that he's the guy and it's all these hot women?
Yes.
Or is that a different
sex cult? Yep.
I mean, come on. Think about when he emerged. I believe it was during the swinging 60s and 70s, right?
Early 70s.
I mean, that guy is a guy after Hugh Hefner's heart when he did that. I mean, come on. And they were like, half of them were having his babies or something, his special space
all
babies.
Asian women. He loved Asian women.
It's like, oh, buddy, it's just like, half the men who were hippies back then, it was just to meet girls.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, down with the government. Yeah, free love and all that. That's what they were after. And his scam was obvious. But people will say, oh, but this other one that I'm involved with, it's different. It's not like that. And then if you look closely, it's like, well, it may not be the exact same thing, but it is like that.
It's exactly like that. And it's the exact same thing, almost down to the very core of the belief systems with every one of these cults. The names and titles have just changed, right? Yeah. But it's the exact same information, right? With the Rael and the Raelian cult, it was the Elohim. With the Seekers cult, it was the Guardian races. With the Aetherist Society, it was the Brotherhood of Light, right? With the what's the other? The Unarius Academy, it was higher beings. With the Order of the Solar Temple, it was the Brotherhood of Light again. It's just regurgitated same information. It's all the exact same thing. And when they get caught up and all their predictions fail of mass landing and mass natural disasters, they just do the switcheroo.
Yeah, it's on to the next thing. Some people have pointed out that some well-known, folks in our community, recently have pivoted. David Wilcock, for example, people have pointed out how when his stuff he was on, like, there's going to be massive arrests and there's all this stuff, and people were beginning to see, gee, that's not true, as if they shouldn't have been able to tell from word one. He started turning into the, it's more spiritual. He started shifting, and that's what they do. They become masters of the pivot, because people's memories are short term, particularly people who want to believe. And it's been said before, it's not original here. This community has absorbed a lot of people who just basically weren't interested in traditional in churches anymore. They're not interested in, traditional churches, but they still are believers. They still want that spiritual belief structure. So they just replace, the known religious icons with their new icons. The whistleblower saint, the veteran saint, the experiencer, so-called experiencer, and on and so forth.
Yeah, it's a regurgitation of religion, Christianity, Abrahamic religions, and they replace Jesus and God with extraterrestrials and angels with extraterrestrials, right? Mm-hmm. And they just rebranded the whole thing for a new generation of people that are no longer like religion.
And the what we've seen kind of turned up, as they say, is the reaction to the heretic. Since 2017, we have seen the increase of what would be the UFO community's equivalent of the religious zealots, right? Those are the rabid zealots, okay, who are the strong believers, and they're the ones who circle the wagons and ratio any naysayers. They're reacting like religious fanatics to what they have identified as a heretic. How dare you speak out against Tic Tac being what we say it is? How dare you question Commander Fravor? How dare you question the Saint Lou, Saint Lou Elizondo? How dare you question him? And because here we come to ratio you with blasphemy. I mean, they might as well grow their hair and beards out long, and you get their staff and be out there in the wilderness screaming and yelling like a UFO community John the Baptist, screaming about the heretics, and because that's how they're acting. That's really how they're acting.
Yeah, and that's to keep everybody on track with the exact same narrative, I personally believe, right? Well, when anyone strays off the path, they are there. Yeah. Their little minions are there to get you back on the path.
Yeah, ignore the man behind the curtain. It's just like what in The Wizard of Oz, they want you looking at the big screen with the big head and the flames, and they want you looking at the show. They don't want you to see the man behind the curtain pulling all the levers, who's manipulating them. Most of them, I think. Now, this is me coming from my operational experience with Uncle Sam. I have no doubt, and haven't doubted from the beginning, that interspersed in these loud voices, particularly UFO Twitter, there are, let's call them government employees sitting at their little computers who are on, riling some people up, pushing things there, under their profiles, to, kind of fan the flames of the fanboy zealots. I think they've had a hand in it. It's all part of the perception management operation that is, I think, at the heart of all this.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. And that was something that came up in this congressional hearing, and Ryan Graves didn't mention it. The only person that confirmed that there was government disinformation or government agents or government that are trying to cover up the existence of extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial craft was Koresh. Still can't say his freaking name, Walter. Why am I having such a hard time saying this fake whistleblower's name, bro?
Oh, maybe it's. But Grush, yes, Grush.
You're gonna have to correct me every time that I say it.
Think of a brush with a G instead of a B. Grush.
Yeah, Grush. But we're gonna get into this. I've put together some clips from this. Sure. From this congressional testimony. And before we get into that, just a reminder, this is fair use, and under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, and research. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be commenting on the congressional hearing, the UFO congressional hearing, ultra top secret. Here we go.
I became a whistleblower through a PPD 19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals.
He just said it right there. His testimony is based upon individuals, right? This is really important right here. You got to listen to what he's saying.
It's hearsay, yes.
Yep.
Standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country. Many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony.
Classified oral testimony. That is his information, right? Some pictures, some videos, but not classified pictures, not classified videos, because if they were classified, then he would have said that they were classified. But the only thing that he has is classified testimony. People just telling the stories.
And unless he had better have been cleared to hear that or read that testimony, or he's, incriminated himself or the person giving it to him. Because if it was indeed classified testimony, that's classified. Yeah, you either have the clearance to see it, hear it, receive it, or you do not. So therefore, you knowingly, particularly in a position like his, or worse, the person providing that is violating,
Yeah, I think that he was cleared by the DOD to speak about everything that he knows, but yet he doesn't speak about everything he knows.
But what did we also not hear that? Sure, he was cleared to speak about everything he knows because he doesn't know anything classified. Yeah. That was my understanding.
Yep, that's exactly right. Yep.
So see, that means nothing, but it impresses some people in the community. Oh, the DOD cleared him. Well, if you're not spilling any beans, the DOD is going to say, fine, talk about what you want. This isn't. Yeah, it's when I was working for the FBI, I've been a writer, writing screenplays and fiction for years before I started writing nonfiction. And when I was an FBI employee, I would have to send whatever novels or scripts I wrote to headquarters, Office of Professional, the OPM, whatever. And they would read through it and make sure you weren't revealing anything classified. Okay. And if you weren't, they would send it back and say, okay, yeah, you're free to get this crap published. Well, that some people in our community would take, they said it was okay for you to talk about what's in your book. Yeah, because there was nothing in it that was classified. Same thing here. DOD, of course, they gave him the clearance because there was nothing there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and they wouldn't give someone the clearance to talk about something classified if it was actually classified material. See, that's the only thing that they really. This is what my big thing about people in the community when they think that they're being harassed or that they're being targeted and all that. Yeah. I'm like, well, the only reason that you would be harassed or the only reason that you would be targeted is if you had some sort of classified material. If you had a classified document, you had something that was a top secret document, that's the only reason that they're going to go after you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Or if you have some sort of classified information, that is legitimately the only reasons. Otherwise, they don't care. They don't care, Walter.
But you got people right now watching this that are saying, that's not true, man. People are harassed by the MIB and the this, that, and the other. It's folks, too many people have believed what they've seen in movies and the unproven testimony of others, some people in the community, and they take that as gospel fact, so to speak, proven fact. And then when you look closely, you find out, no, that comes from some movie or TV show they saw, and, their buddy talking late at night over too many beers, or something.
That's exactly right. We're going to continue on this congressional testimony. Boom.
My various colleagues. I have taken every step I can to corroborate this evidence over a period of 4 years while I was with the UAP Task Force and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because...
Oh, and also anytime that you want to make a comment or anything that I don't stop the video, just raise your hand and I'll stop it.
Well, he's. I will say something about that. He's done his due diligence to the extent that he can. Don't be misled by that. That doesn't mean that the measurement by which that he was able to achieve proves his conclusions. Okay, his conclusions. He's coming to his own conclusions based on the extent that he felt necessary, to convince himself. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, he's convinced of it, but he doesn't have any proof or evidence of it, basically.
Yeah.
Steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you. I am driven by a commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them.
He's speaking to the facts as he's been
As
told
he had been
them.
told them. Yes. And to tag on to something I said before, remember, we all, you, myself, all of us, we have our own personal criteria for what convinces us. The distinction we draw, which I mentioned earlier, is just because I'm convinced of certain things in my personal experiences doesn't mean I expect anyone else to be convinced. And I know that, and I'm open with that. It's I'm convinced of certain experiences I've had are something weird or whatever. I don't expect any of you to believe that about mine. And I think you probably are the same way. It's like, hey, I don't expect you to believe, what I think about my stuff. And when we get to the level of a hearing like this, that's in effect, they're trying to cross that line. You need to believe what I'm saying, because either who I am, what I was, or something. Now, he's talking about really just accepting what he's saying is he's just accepting the word of people. That's what was your interpretation of that?
Yeah, he doesn't have any evidence. We're going to get into it here a little bit later, because he's questioned several times about if he has seen extraterrestrial craft. He's questioned if he's seen the non-biological entities or non-human biologicals that come along with these craft.
Yeah.
And he doesn't present, he says that's classified, and I can only talk to you about that behind closed doors. But at the same time, he also says that the military has and uses advanced craft, that they're in the possession of extraterrestrial reverse engineer craft.
Well, and even that's hearsay. And just to tag on to something, that's what we've been saying here is, he's, by being at this hearing and being involved in this, he's asking, a government, the United States Congress to act on these things that he's been convinced of only on hearsay. You and I and other experiencers watching this, we're not out there asking, the United States Congress to act on what we believe, right? But here he is. And I, what, I think it's kind of sad, because I think he was kind of pushed into this by, others with more of a stake in it. But go ahead.
I think that's exactly what's going on too. And he could be anybody, right? It could be me out there saying these regurgitated things that I've heard from the UFO community for 30 years. It could be tomfoolery here that's in the chat, right? It could be Pyramid Steven here that's in the chat that's up there saying these things, because we don't have any evidence that that's what's going on. He doesn't have any evidence that's what's going on either. It could be anybody up there, right?
Exactly. And just because when he got out, he was lieutenant colonel, right? He made lieutenant colonel, I think. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken.
I believe so,
folks, I've seen people, either highly ranked enlisted or officers towards the end of their careers, otherwise fine duty performance and everything. I've seen them do stupid criminal things. Okay. So I hate to be cynical about it, but just because somebody is of, a respectable rank and they serve their country and stuff, doesn't mean that they're incapable of being a fool or lying. But
absolutely. Let's keep going here.
Formed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it.
Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Here comes the threat narrative, right?
Yeah.
Threat narrative time.
Good, because that's one of my favorite topics.
Yes, and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had.
Yep.
And you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
That is a main thing of this. It's
And
just kind of lumped in there. It's kind of just thrown in there every once in a while during this
And
hearing.
that's why it was developed, and that's why it was tested on our personnel to get their real. See, nothing. Pay close attention. Nothing he said there says that it was from another world.
Yep.
You know.
Exactly.
Okay, you two?
Well, I would also like to add from a commercial aviation and military aviation perspective,
Here comes Ryan Graves to back him up.
we deal with uncertainty in our operating space as a matter of our professional actions. Identifying friend from foe is very important to us. And so when we have unidentified targets and we continue to ignore those due to a stigma or a fear of what it could be, that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
What steps should be taken to better understand and respond to UAP encounters in the interest of national security?
There needs to be a location where this information is centralized for processing, and there needs to be a two-way communication loop so the operators on the front end have a feedback and can get best practices on how to process information, what to do, and to ensure that their reporting is being listened to. Right now, there is not a lot of back and forth.
Mr. Grush, in your complaint to the intelligence community inspector, Inspector General, you claim that you believe information is being hidden. What kind of information do you think was hidden, and do you think it should remain hidden?
Yes, I can speak to that very briefly in an unclassified manner, as the preponderance of my complaint was classified to the intelligence communities. Both material acquisition and exploitation activity, also baselining the UAPs but not sharing it with intelligence professionals that are actually doing step briefs to pilots.
They don't all have a need to know, Mr. Grush. Damn.
I know. That's exactly right.
This just blows my mind. And what bothers me is there's people in our community that are just eating this up with a spoon. Wow. And they're sitting there. Every word coming out of these guys' mouths right now is confirming that that it's from another world. What it is not one of these three guys had any kind of full need to know about either the things they encountered themselves or the things that they've heard about. Okay. If he was denied access to some stuff, it was because he wasn't cleared for the access to it. You have to understand that world to understand, how to navigate through what they're saying here. Okay. You can't just take it at face value, but there's, a bunch of, hey dude, they're vets, guys, most of whom, no judgment, but we get a lot of the vet bros aren't guys who are veterans themselves. No. They're bros who all right, vets, they've never served themselves. And what do I mean by bringing that up? They've never been in that the military environment, the military community, our culture. Okay. So they don't know how to discern what these guys are saying. They don't know how to recognize what's being left out. Okay. There is some spin going on here, whether all three of these individuals know there's spin going on here in their own words. Or if they do know, to what degree they're aware of it. Okay. It's there's spin going on here. Because my view is there's a big perception management thing going on here. Okay. And the threat of the threat narrative is part of the reason that there's a huge perception management thing going on since 2017. That's what, 2017 is a hollow landmark. Okay, folks, nothing that the UFO believers care about changed with 2017. If you believe that the New York Times article changed everything, no, it didn't. It just was a wide net to get new believers. Okay, that's all it was. It was a proselytization, so to speak. It was a big recruitment haul. Okay, but nothing that what 2017 marks is the beginning of the public face, the public element of a perception management operation going on. That's what I think.
Absolutely, I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Assuming that there are reasons why not all this should be made public, this has been around for a long
This is a really good line of questioning here from this congressman.
Okay.
period of time. Can any of the three of you think of any reason why anything related to UAPs, say 15 years and back, should not be immediately made public?
Crickets.
I think one of it is acknowledging a vulnerability, both from a collection and I'll just say a countermeasure perspective. So it's
We'll go with say-
that we
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
cracked for many
crickets.
years. Yeah.
Even
Crickets-
say 20 years.
Crickets, because at least the other two guys there, oh shoot, they didn't brief us on how to respond to that. But go ahead.
Yep.
Is there any reason why when you go back that far, things shouldn't be made public?
Unless it shows a specific national security vulnerability as it relates to a weakness in a particular defense system.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you why, because it's our technology and they don't want our technology getting out. That's why.
Bingo. That look, the military, half of the, I'm just going to throw a number out there to emphasize a point. Half of the U.S. military's interest in the whole UFO phenomenon is okay, how much of our technology do they know about? How many people have seen it? To what degree are they talking about this? Now, here's another one. Here is another one. I'm going to piss off some sensitives out there. Okay. If you think that the United States military had never seriously looked at UFOs before 2017, you're an idiot. Okay? I'm sorry. You're ignorant. You're being ignorant. I guarantee you. Come on. All you got to do is take a look. The U.S. military has taken this very seriously since, I'm going to at least say the 1952 wave. Let's say that. I say before then. But, if you're being honest with yourself and you give it a real look, just because they haven't expressed it in a way that pleases the true believers, zealots, over the years publicly, I promise you they have taken this stuff seriously. That's why I'm saying, again, 2017 is a big hollow landmark. It's a big nothing. But I think you hit the nail on the head. We're talking about our technology. And people say, yeah, but the things people say it does, it couldn't possibly be ours. Let me tell you, people exaggerate in their excitement. If they say, oh my God, it was going 10,000 miles an hour. And if you were to really get the real data, it was going, this has been demonstrated in various studies. Project Blue Book pointed this, or Ed Ruppelt in his book, the report on UFOs. He had cases of that where he personally confirmed through investigation that something that was only going like a few hundred miles per hour was being reported as, oh my God, thousands of miles per hour, when it couldn't possibly be. So people exaggerate what they're seeing in their excitement. And, anyway,
Yep.
the
that's
government and the
exactly-
military has been very serious about this for decades.
Yep. And that has been the cover up, I believe, in getting people to believe in extraterrestrials, that all these craft are coming from off the planet. That is the cover up to keep our technology from being revealed. And that's, I believe.
And I think they are.
Yeah.
I think ETs have been here. I think ETs do come here. That's all, but that's a different discussion. And this gets back. I'm glad you kind of went there. The threat narrative. Okay. The rejection of the threat narrative right now is based upon the whole Werner von Braun deathbed confession story, which, by the way, I say it's alleged because we only have one source
Exactly.
for that this even happened. And I've been doing a little research. I haven't presented my findings, but I have found reason to question the timing of that, certain people involved in the background. There's evidence that there was this agenda that, when I finish my research on that, I'm in the middle of working on another book. But anyway, I call it alleged. Okay. But even if it's a true story, okay, that he said these things, when you look at what he said, I think it's being either misinterpreted or purposely mischaracterized. Okay. And what is that? What is the von Braun deathbed confession? It's the allegation that Werner von Braun warned that the ET threat would be used against us by, he didn't use the term deep state, but by essentially the deep state. It'll all be a lie, the threat. Now, I think what he was saying, he wasn't saying that there was no ET threat. He said the ET threat narrative would be used against us by a deep state, Here's the thing. Look at it this way, because I think there is an ET threat. I think it's only logical. Space is vast. If there are countless worlds out there and there are multiple intelligent civilizations, which I think there are, and technologically advanced civilizations, which I think there are, I don't think it's unreasonable to assume we're going to encounter them. And folks, not all of them are going to be nice and have our best interests in heart. We are going to encounter a belligerent civilization that's going to come at us to harm us, to conquer us. Okay. And here's the thing. A deep state could use that against we got to protect you from this. So you got to give up all these freedoms. You got to do all this stuff. Now, they did this during the 2000s with the terrorism threat. Terrorists are real. We know that for a fact. The terrorist threat is real. But what did they do to us using the terrorist threat theme?
They weaponized it. Yeah.
Yeah, they weaponized our fear against us. That they spun up the threat, the immediate threat level. They passed nefarious things through the Patriot Act, and that's exactly the kind of scenario that von Braun was talking about. Okay, and that's real world. Everybody, most people in our community accept that the terrorist threat was spun up, made to look more immediately dangerous than it was at the moment, to get us to buy off on giving up freedoms and stuff like that. That's what I think is going on here. They're wanting to move toward the ET threat narrative, okay, to get us to buy off on giving up more freedom and to move to a global control structure, that kind of thing. Or we're much closer to a global conflict, another world war, so to speak, than we realize.
I think that's true. And I really like Ray's Machine's comment here. He says, there's never been a government or a military cover-up. People have perpetuated a cover-up because they pick one of two sides. I think that really brings all of this together. Ray's Machine, thank you for that comment. It's pretty spot on there.
Note particularly for the two pilots, and I have a question for Mr. Grush. One of the things that I found fascinating in our discussion, Mr. Graves, last night as well, is that you both described UAPs and formations and the way they are observed in space or in our air, and the way that they move is essentially ways in which current technology or aircraft that we know of are unable to actually function or move. And so will you just, for the public record, again, once again, just briefly just either describe or note that aircraft that are being witnessed, particularly by the 30 folks that you're working with, are essentially outside the scope of anything that we know of today and the technology we have today. Mr. Graves, Mr. Fravor?
This is the spin of the propulsion. It moves so fast, unlike any aircraft that we ever even known about. Right?
And again, people, keep in mind, no matter what you're going to hear from Commander Fravor and Mr. Graves, they simply, from my perspective, just did not have and do not have a need to know the details of what they were witnessing. Okay.
Yes, the objects that are being seen by commercial pilots are performing maneuvers that are unexplainable due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country, and that applies for the military as well.
Stop. Pause right there.
Yeah,
Pause
I concur
right
with
there.
that. We have nothing that can.
Okay, and he's getting ready to say some more BS too. Okay, I'm sorry, Ryan Graves, all due respect, was in no position to say what he said with that kind of conclusion. You know, oh, it's beyond our. How does he know? What was his position again? He was on the ship, right?
Yeah, I think he was on the Nimitz, I believe.
And what was he, a communications or radar guy?
Yeah, I think a radar. Don't quote me on this because I'm not absolutely sure, but I'm sure.
Okay.
I think that he was a radar technician, I believe.
Mr. Graves was in no position to know the extent of human knowledge of physics. Okay, whenever I hear this, I'm like, oh my God, were you a scientist, a physicist on an ultra secret project pushing the envelope of known physics? No, you were not. You know, all due respect for your military service and duty, fine. And Fravor's going to say the same thing. He even puts it worse. You know, my eyes caught the screen there, but you know, Fravor, if you go back to what he says, it's beyond everything we know. I'm sorry, Commander, you are not qualified to say that malarkey, and I think he is smart enough to know that he's spouting BS. But
well, yeah, and absolutely, and you've proven that they've had some form of what you could call an anti-gravity type machine since the early 1800s, right?
well,
And Dr. Farrow has proven that they've had it since.
I don't. It's not proven. It's not proven. There's been compelling evidence to argue that case, but here's the better evidence for that. In the 1950s, just about all the technological publications, you know, both academic and both, you know, public, on the magazine shelves and stuff like that, there was all sorts of talk about anti-gravity research, anti-gravity technology being pursued. And then around 1958, I believe, suddenly that ceased, that stopped. No more talk about anti-gravity. Now, I happen to lean towards this interpretation. Dr. Farrell definitely thinks there's something to it, and others, not just, you know, us. That looks like a breakthrough was made. Okay. And oh, wow, big breakthrough. So let's put a lid on discussing it. That's actually among the compelling evidence that some type of anti-gravity breakthrough was made, but it hasn't been proven, but there's a compelling argument for it. So,
well,
you know,
there's those drawings and schematics, right? That would be considered at least evident. That would be evidence that they
it is definitely a form of evidence. What I was able to show was that the concept of the Nazi bell pre-existed the World War II era, because I kind of, you know, saw that. I found it in the Delschau material, and I brought it to the attention, you know, first of Stephen Romano, the guy who published the fantastic Art of Delschau book, because it was in that book that he published that I found it. And then I showed it to Joseph Farrell, and his jaw dropped, because essentially there it is, the same exact concept of the Nazi bell, sketched and laid out and described sometime between 1893 and 1923 by Delschau. Delschau died in 1923, so it had to have been done before, you know, 1923. And he's claiming it was being done in the 1850s. So there is evidence that at least the bell concept, listen to my words, the concept of the Nazi bell, Die Glocke, existed in the 19th century.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That concept is documented.
Which makes a lot of sense, because NIMSA was funded by Prussia, which.
Well, according to Delschau, yeah, NIMSA was an organization headquartered in Germany, and this was back when Germany were the 48 Prussian states, and the Prussian nationalists were really the ones pushing the unification of Germany. And according to Delschau, this mysterious organization NIMSA was their organization behind the pursuit of and the development of this technology. They were kind of sponsoring it, or they were the umbrella for these small groups. doing this, including the Sonora Aero Club. When you give it an honest, fair look, and several researchers before I ever saw this stuff gave it an honest, fair look, and anybody who's still claiming that Del Shal's an outsider artist, and the airship mystery was just a big April 1st hoax. Excuse me, where's my glasses so I can do this right? It's just an outsider artist, and it was all a hoax. You're just not being honest. There's more to it than that. But what's the point? The point is this is evidence. Oh, and I have further pointed out in the last year or two, I've done a report on my Walter Bosley channel. I lay it all out there and I show the graphics. In 1850, 1849, maybe 51, there is Macorne Racine. Okay, Macorne Racine published
Racine turbine.
The Racine turbine, yes. And he was one of the fathers of the thermodynamics, the study of thermodynamics. And get this, the schematic of the system, the propulsion system used by the mysterious Sonora Aero Club for their flying machines in the 1850s is virtually identical to the Racine turbine, which was published in the same era. So either Del Shal was aware of that Racine turbine and just, made it all up and, oh yeah, this is what they used. Or these guys in California in the Sonora Aero Club were students of thermodynamics and engineering, and they found an application for the Racine turbine. What's the point of this? The point of this is that there is strong evidence to suggest that this kind of thing that leads to anti-gravity was being developed, according to some very compelling sources and evidence, in the mid-19th century. And so when you get to the 20th century, 1958, you've got roughly 100 years of reasonably suspected development being pursued in that. So if they had a breakthrough in 1958, it's logical. And none of this had to do with the reverse engineering of captured flying saucers from another world, which, people who shouldn't be pushing that in our communities, respected scholars, historians of UFO who still push that, they should know better. That's lazy scholarship. It's arrogance.
Yeah, that's a myth that's been perpetuated in the community. Again, I think to cover up the fact that we have developed and researched this technology on our own.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Exactly. It's we couldn't possibly. So again, going back to Commander Fravor, the stuff that we couldn't possibly do. Shame on you. You know better. If I were down there in San Diego, at the barbecue joint where all the pilots go, or whatever bar they hang out, we're having a beer, just lowly Air Force Captain Walter and Commander Dave, I'd say, Commander, just you and me here. Come on. And I have no doubt that he'd smile and just sip his beer, not, because it's just on the face of it. That's a ridiculous statement, but I get it. He's part of a dog and pony show going on.
Absolutely. We got to get through some more of this video.
There and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours and go back up.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes
I'm sorry. How do you know? How do you know? U.S. Naval Aviator, I'm sorry. That alone does not mean but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. That is exactly right. I was rolling my eyes so hard first time I watched it.
You have also said some of these answers in the past. We're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really important. Mr. Gresh, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General, and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
And so far, he hasn't said they're from another world. He hasn't qualified where those UAPs are from. They could have been other militaries on this planet, but go ahead.
And he was told by people that the government has craft, which is really interesting, because remember this, people that are watching, remember what he just said right there, because it comes up later on in this conversation and it's a huge contradiction. between what he said right now and what he says later on.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would just say that I think that these questions are important questions, and I look forward to being involved in the process to get those answered. I know there'll be a lot of questions from other committee members, so I yield back.
Mr. Graves, again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Thank you.
Very good question.
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would.
How do they know that it can stay still in a Category 5 winds, hurricane winds?
Well, did he say they were, or he was saying that they could?
That's really interesting. If they could, because how would they examine that?
Exactly. If he said they could, then I'm sorry, Mr. Graves. That's where do you get that conclusion? If he's saying they did, then that means somebody witnessed it, and meteorologists, Navy meteorologists measured it, or whatever. As we both know, did and could are distinctions. But again, I'm sorry if you're not read in and you're not involved with advanced technology development, you just can't assume, based on what you are exposed to, you should know better than to make a statement like that if you've been around that world and learned anything at all about it.
Do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Favor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac, very briefly?
The performance, absolute performance. It was.
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has, in this world, that has those capabilities?
No, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
To the extent that you know, Commander, to the extent that you know. I'm sorry, folks, but there are scientists and military personnel who know much more the extent of scientific knowledge than the esteemed Commander Fravor. Okay, and he knows that.
Yeah, he has a kind of a weird little smirk on his face whenever he's answering some of these questions too. He's really short with his answers. He's like, oh, like.
Well, I also want to point out. I don't know if anybody's taken a look at it. Maybe this is something you want to look at, but take a look at the congressional, the committee. Maybe we can learn a lot by who's not on this panel. In other words, are these congressmen, I don't know, perhaps you can answer this question. Are these the congressmen that are the most qualified to be hearing this testimony? Or are the congressmen who would most likely, for whatever reason, because some congressmen are read in on things, sometimes in some cases beyond the average military person. My point is, maybe that could be very telling, is the congressman that might understand or know the answers that these guys don't know, maybe they're not there. And that could tell you, it's like, okay, yeah, give the public what it wants, do this dog and pony show, whoever, just so-and-so will not be on the panel, but
yeah, one of the congressmen didn't even know the difference between the Tic Tac video and TikTok social media. So I don't know if they're the most qualified or not, but there's a few of them that were kind of skeptical, and they didn't get a lot of time in this congressional hearing. They only got like a couple of questions in there. So, take that for what it is.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers, maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Grush, do you have any personal knowledge?
You see how quick that was? It's like,
nope. And here's the thing, folks, that doesn't impress me. That does not prove, the Tic Tac. All it is he doesn't know. And you gotta be able to understand that and read that properly. It just means he doesn't know. It doesn't mean all the wild things you want to believe, or that the carnival barker sitting behind him in the green shirt wants you to believe. Okay, it's that he doesn't know, and he's not the ultimate authority, the pilot of all pilots, who's going to be told about every little thing that's being developed. That's what you've got to keep in mind. This is a sleight of hand going on here.
Yep.
People have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology.
Yes.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Go back, because we were talking. What was Burchett's question to him again that he just unequivocally answered yes to?
Hold on, let me try and go back just a tiny bit.
Because this is good.
Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you know of?
I don't know how far to go back on it. Hold on.
Oh, no, I think basically he ask him something to the effect of
Abilities.
No, I think it's far beyond
Yeah, it's right here. It's up next.
actually our material science that we currently possess.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tacs maneuver?
We're back a little bit farther, but I'm going to keep it running.
Or any of the others?
Yeah.
I am not.
Okay.
Okay, it's
Mr.
right after
Grush, do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes.
I remember this
Personally.
part. Yeah.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could
And you don't know.
get in a confidential area, SCIF, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the SCIF, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario.
To your knowledge,
Yes, and why would they be denied access to the SCIF where he was giving supposed classified briefings to these congressmen and women?
Probably because he had to present what he was going to talk about, and they reviewed it, and they determined, and that might be where this comes from, they determined there's no need for a SCIF. So we've got other people that need to use the SCIF for serious things, or real world need for it. So no, you don't get to use the SCIF for that. Stephen Greer claimed that a whole group of people were murdered in Detroit for investigating or having some kind of advanced and
technology.
I mean, my gosh,
device.
people, come on, it's wow.
are NHIs working with adversarial foreign governments in either technology exchange programs or back engineering programs?
I don't have data on that. I'm not sure.
Have you heard?
Which is completely contradicting to what he just said earlier.
Wait. She asked if he was aware of what the U.S. or who was working with hostile nations or other nations. What
If
was
the
her?
United States was working with other countries on reverse engineering extraterrestrial technology.
Wait, she said extraterrestrial?
I think she might have said extraterrestrial. Let's go back.
Or back engineering programs?
Back engineering. Back engineering is similar to extraterrestrial, I guess.
No. Back engineering has been something they've been doing since the Cold War started, even before then, actually. When you capture, foreign technology, they take it apart, every little piece, and they back engineer it. They go, okay, this is what we've got. This is how they discovered that the MiGs in the 50s. Okay, they discovered the comparatively primitive technology that the Russians had been using up to a point compared to our technology. Where we had electronics, they would have like a physical pin poking up, I think, to let you know that your landing gear was up, or so. That's just one example. And you do that through breaking down and putting back together so that you understand, how that stuff works. This back engineering thing is a common thing that exists on the real world mundane level. And people throw that phrase around like the use of the phrase back engineering must mean, capturing a ET craft and literally reverse engineering to build your own so that okay. No, back engineering is something that has existed, and just because you might find a document that refers to it doesn't mean it had anything to do with extraterrestrial. Okay, it was very
she's using a play on words there. She's saying back engineering, and when people hear back engineering, they automatically think the reverse engineering or back engineering of crashed alien technology, right?
Yeah, and that's the game that gets played. Because people don't want to be told that that Santa Claus doesn't exist. That's really we're talking on that level. Subconsciously. I'm not trying to be insulting, but when you're talking about what that line where people just decide I'm going to believe this, they have to be honest with themselves and understand, okay, you're selecting to believe something. That's fine. We all do that. I do it, you do it. We all do that with certain things, okay? But just understand that is your personal leap of faith, and it's not proof of anything necessarily.
That's a good one, Jacob. Good one. Funny. Okay, let's
I don't
keep
have
going.
data on that. I'm not sure.
Have you heard or you had people come forward to present that evidence?
Not that particular evidence that you just espoused.
Okay, on the 19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of AARO, had said that he did not find any evidence of UAPs. You also stated that you had, in your interview, that you had briefed him on information that you were uncovering, but that he did not follow up with you. Were the items that you divulged to him pertinent to national security?
Yes, him and I had a classified conversation in April 2022 before he took over AARO in July 2022, and I provided him some concerns I had.
Do you know why he might not have followed up with you?
Unfortunately, I cannot read his mind. I wish he did.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human survive those G-forces with known technology today?
This is an interesting question.
And I asked this question: who says there has to be a human pilot or crew aboard those things,
or anyone at all in them?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I'm. Yeah, any living biological entity inside.
Yep.
No.
No, not for the acceleration rates that we observed.
Okay. Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government,
Which that means that, in my eyes, them saying that it's a drone technology.
It is in a very generally, it's an incredibly advanced drone, obviously, because the amount of control you'd have to have at those speeds. But hey, again, if we're talking engineering on such an advanced level, then they have the remote controlling systems all equally developed to where you've got your drone pilot sitting in the remote location who, using the technology to match what the craft is doing, they're able to efficiently control that craft at those incredible speeds and maneuvers.
Yep.
have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work,
I don't know about you, Ryder, but I've personally interviewed individuals who claim that.
Me too.
Anyway.
So right, dude. This guy could be anyone. It could be me. It could be you. It could be anybody off the street. It could be the neighbor next door, a homeless person down the road.
Dude, he's a veteran, man. Don't question him.
Oh, I've spoken to many people. I've heard many people on YouTube and on Facebook and these social media platforms talk about reverse engineering of non-biological UFOs and extraterrestrial ships. I mean, people talk about that stuff all the time. It's been talked about in our community for 30 years now.
Sure, yeah.
Wild.
have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason
Conventional,
to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight, what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I would call it abuse here. So congressional oversight of conventional special access programs. So I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119 discusses congressional oversight of SAPs, discusses the DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a waived or waive bigoted unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but how does a
This is where they get into the funding, which I think is literally the only interesting part about this entire congressional hearing.
program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed
Pause
session.
it, hold it.
But,
Pause right there.
Mr.
Okay. He just identified the congressional body, the Gang of Eight, right? He just identified that there are members of Congress, a particular panel, that should be notified of what they're talking about, right? Okay. May I ask, are any of the Gang of Eight present at this hearing?
I don't believe so.
My understanding is no. Okay. What does that tell us? That means, and Mr. Grush, and these people, they don't have personal knowledge of what that committee of eight, that panel of eight, has been briefed on. So he can say all that, well, they're supposed to be briefed. They're supposed to be, well, maybe they have been, folks. Maybe, again, this is what I'm saying. You got to look at who's not at this hearing in Congress. The people who know the answers to those questions, the people who know more than these three guys sitting here, and even the congressman sitting on the panel, they're not there. Okay. So again, that's kind of a very misleading thing if people latch onto that, just because he's not aware of them being briefed on this mysterious technology doesn't mean they haven't been. That's my point.
I agree.
Appropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD.
Okay. Satellite imagery.
That's like the only good thing in this entire congressional hearing.
And does that really shock
Anyone?
people? If you've got a secret program, okay, who's the guy? He was a football player and then he was a congressman for years. Catherine Austin Fitts worked for him. Jack, his last name is escaping me. Remember, Catherine Austin Fitts, she has said that she pretty much learned how that works from him, saying, hey, don't spaz out, but how do you think this advanced technology, how do you think we appropriate the funds? We're not misappropriating the funds. We have to keep it classified because there are foreign intelligence agents watching everything Congress does. So, are they going to figure out basically, a $10,000 screwdriver? I wonder what that's going for. Okay, actually going to make. Well, of course they know that we're not spending $10,000 on a screwdriver. The point is you do it that way so that they don't know exactly what it is you're spending the money for. And in my opinion, I'm sorry, that's legitimate. Okay, because the people go, well, we're supposed to know I guarantee you, if we get into another world war and your military, okay, is able to pull out all the secret weaponry, okay, that we have to keep you safe, to keep the mainland safe, to ostensibly win that war, suddenly all you people bitching about them hiding what they're spending it on are going to be thanking your lucky stars that they did it that way, because the idea is to have the secret weapon. I mean, I'm military enough to tell you, that's another thing you need to grow up about. In the world and the times we live in, like it or not, we need that secret weapon. We need that hammer behind our back so that when it comes down to the dark and stormy night and combat time, you can bang the enemy right on the head and get the edge and win. Okay. That's why all the secrecy with this military technology. And yeah, you shouldn't be shocked that the way they identify the money publicly is to hide it. It's not abuse like people think it is. Okay. It's just properly camouflaging it so that the enemy agents, I spent 12 years of my, career daily going after enemy agents looking to do just that, to find out all these kinds of things. Okay. I know wherefore I speak. And,
yeah, I'm really surprised that they let this little tidbit of
people have talked about that publicly. People have known, figured that out years ago, So, I mean, anybody that still believes that $10,000 is being spent on a toilet seat, each individual toilet seat, okay, you're being kind of silly and naive, but go ahead.
But it's just interesting that section of this was kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, because it's really the truest thing that's talked about in this entire.
Oh, funny that the truest thing slips through the cracks, but all the sensationalist, misleading crap is what people latch onto. Boy, that right there describes the UFO community to a T. Go ahead.
It does.
Let's talk about satellite imagery. We have satellites all over the place, some that we're aware of and many that we're not aware of, right? We're taking pictures of everything at every point and second. Mr. Grush, are you aware, do you have direct knowledge, or have you talked to people with direct knowledge that there are satellite imagery of these events?
That was one of my primary tasks at NGA, since we process, exploit, and disseminate that kind of information. I've seen multiple cases, some of which, to my understanding, and of course I left NGA in April, so that's my information cutoff date. But I personally reviewed both what we call overhead collection and from other strategic and tactical platforms.
Mr. Garouche, in your sworn testimony, you state that the
This is really good right here. This is good. This is good stuff right here from this woman.
United States government has retrieved supposedly extraterrestrial spacecraft and other UAP-related artifacts. You go so far as to state that the U.S. is in possession of, quote, non-human spacecraft, end quote, and that some of these artifacts have circulated with defense contractors. Several other former military and intelligence officials have come forward with similar allegations, albeit in non-public settings. However, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO, previously testified before Congress that there has been, and I quote, no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity or of, quote, off-world technology brought to the attention of the office.
If it's not extraterrestrial craft, if it's not off-world technology, that only leaves one other thing that it can be.
Refresh my. I was distracted from a text message there. What office is she talking about specifically?
She's talking about Kirkpatrick giving his testimony to Congress from AARO, saying that there is no evidence of extraterrestrials and no evidence of extraterrestrial craft or off-world planet craft.
Again, he.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Someone in his position may be in more of a position to need to know that kind of stuff, but yeah, I would have to see the context of what she's quoting, because
Hold on, let me go back.
Let me put it to you this way.
Let me go back and you can hear it.
Well, I get the gist. I would lie about certain things to camouflage an operation. Yeah, like, for instance, if I was doing anything under any kind of level of cover, I would lie right there to protect my cover, right?
Well, she's using this in an instance as a contradiction, as Chris Kirkpatrick.
Yeah, go back. I apologize. I apologize for being distracted.
No, it's okay.
Extraterrestrial spacecraft and other UAP-related artifacts.
she's saying right now that Kurish has been saying that there are extraterrestrial craft. She's just verifying his claims right here.
Yeah,
Facts.
and I
You go so
again,
far as-
I apologize. I've had a family member in the hospital in the last 24 hours, so I was just monitoring a text.
No
Somebody
worries.
telling me about their condition, so I apologize.
It's okay.
But go ahead.
To state that the U.S. is in possession of, quote, non-human spacecraft, end quote, and that some of these artifacts have circulated with defense contractors. Several other former military and intelligence officials have come forward with similar allegations, albeit in non-public settings. However, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO, previously testified before Congress that there has been, and I quote, no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity or of, quote, off-world technology brought to the attention of the office. To your knowledge, is that statement correct?
It's not accurate. I believe Dr. Kirkpatrick mentioned he had about 30 individuals that have come to Arrow thus far. A few of those individuals have also come to Arrow that I also interviewed,
Okay.
and I know what they provided Dr. Kirkpatrick and their team.
Okay,
I was able to evaluate
okay,
that information.
I need to go on. But
Can you pause right there?
my
She just cuts him off. It's so funny.
Yeah. Okay. Here's what stood out to me in what she said, because I would need to know more of the context of the Kirkpatrick statement, because that's interesting, but I don't feel like I know enough to comment on where he was coming from and stuff. However, something was mentioned right before that, and that is something about the information or this kind of stuff in the possession of contractors. Now, I've said for years, because this crossed my mind when I was an OSI agent at my assignment at LA Air Force Base, which is an aerospace and rocket S&T development base. There's no flight line, okay? It's not that kind of base. So I was a counterintelligence guy, providing counterintelligence coverage and investigation needs and stuff like that for, it was a space command, what they called Space Command Base back then. So that's where I first got read into some cleared for weird stuff with the Air Force. Here's the thing that I learned back then. You can FOIA the government, okay, and you can get some type of, they are compelled to give some type of response, blah, blah, blah. Private industry, which includes the contractors we're talking about, they are not compelled to share with the public any of their proprietary knowledge. It is my opinion, as a former OSI agent, program protection guy, that the U.S. government, the DOD in particular, figured out many years ago that if they put certain things in the custodial under custodial management of private contractors, then that would provide them with culpable deniability to be able to say, the government doesn't have any of this evidence or materials.
Yeah,
We
that was
don't
my
have
point.
that.
That was my point.
But the
beginning.
contractor could very well have this.
Yep.
And you got to understand the legalities. That contractor, if a private company, is not compelled, even under the Constitution, is not compelled to share it with the public. I've said for years, stop FOIAing and demanding that the government do disclosure. Start going after these corporations, because that's where the answers are that you're looking for. But go ahead.
Yeah, they privatize the contracting so that they don't have to admit exactly what they're doing, because it's a private company, and the private company doesn't have to come clean about anything that they're doing. That's what they did with the MK Ultra programs. They just sub-leased out a lot of those programs and those sub-programs to Canada and to private corporations and to hospitals, that way that they didn't have to come out and say, oh yeah, we were actually doing this. That's exactly what they do.
Dan, his statement is accurate, came from a direct quote. And this contradiction is a perfect example of why we need to inject transparency into our government.
Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
Here comes the behind closed doors talk.
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the...
Did he just say 1930s?
He's referring to the Italian case, which was decades ago proven to be a hoax, and there he was invoking it. And again, talk about the state of the UFO community. What he just did there is the same reason we have Bob Lazar being taken seriously again, and other people you can name that. They'll just recycle them in because there's enough people that don't know the history that they'll just buy into it. And yeah, this was when he brought that up the first time, people jumped on that and said, whoa, wait a minute. He's referring to the Italian case. The Italian case has after 1933 and long before this congressional hearing, long before he would have heard of the Italian case, was proven to be a hoax. And I think, again, here's the Lou Elizondo influence. I think he's been pushing that as a serious case. People have reported on. So
I didn't even hear him say that the first time that I listened through this. I didn't hear him say 1930s. It's wild.
Yeah.
Wild.
It's specifically a
Direct
1933 case.
Yeah.
Firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash retrieval, some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases the recovered material would be in. And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51, and and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just and we move like a glacier. As soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up. But please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General.
And we could get that in the skiff if we were allowed to get in a skiff with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses, yeah.
What special access programs cover this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that publicly and how they've evaded oversight. In a closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right.
He's not saying anything at all. Nothing.
That's right.
When do you think those programs began, and who authorized them?
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because
All right. Okay. Has there been an active U.S. government disinformation campaign to deny the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena?
Pay attention to Ryan Graves' answer here, then pay attention to Goresh, his answer, and then to Fravor's answer here.
If so, why?
I can't go beyond what I've already espoused publicly about that.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question.
I might have cut it out. Sorry, guys. I probably cut it out for time. My fault.
What was it that Graves said in response to that?
He said he wasn't aware, and then
Right.
Fravor said that he can't speak for the government.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
I figured
nothing.
I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft.
But Crush, he says that yes, that they are, and that he's aware of it from his whistleblower people that he's interviewed.
More testimony, more
Yeah.
hearsay.
Yeah.
You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
This is perfect right here.
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay. And so
He hasn't seen the bodies. He hasn't seen the
Exactly.
crafts, folks.
And that was the thing that most of us, when we watched this the first time, we're like, well, there you go. If it's not clear to you, by now, there it is. It's like Corey Goode admitting in a court deposition that all his claims and stories were just his IP.
Yep.
That he never went into space. It's the same. It's effectively the same thing.
Yep.
With that being said, and the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me and it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes
Always a good point.
is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Unless we are capable of shooting them down, but go ahead.
This is funny here. It's Grush's explanation on interdimensional aliens. It's really funny.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring?
Only a theoretical framework discussion, yes.
Okay. Okay.
What do you think about Mr. Grush, his explanation of interdimensional activity?
I think, believe it or not, that's one of the things that piqued my curiosity, the fact that it even went there. Because that's an area that I think usually they definitely want to divert from and not get into, because I think there's possibly a there in a general what they know about interdimensionality sense. So
what's interesting is he talks about it as like a theory, and then the congressman says, do you see any documentation that this is really what's happening? And he says, no, that I haven't. It's a theory, and it's theoretical science, which
he says he's seen the theoretical papers, which, that's at least that's more than just a hearsay thing. He says he at least saw, a document on that. And to his credit, let me throw a bone to, Mr. Grush's testimony. Documentary evidence like that, you could argue, okay, just like there's all sorts of articles. I mentioned the articles and the papers written on anti-gravity research in the 50s, and suddenly there was a lid clamped down on the discussion. Well, that is implying to a lot of us that there was some progress made in anti-gravity. Well, the fact that serious scientists were looking at the interdimensionality question, you might want, you might consider, okay, is that a clue to what is being developed? What if there's been a breakthrough, or if there's been some understanding, of because interdimensionality is something that came up on the radar, so to speak, the mental radar, the intellectual radar, during the development of the bomb, the atom bomb. Joseph Farrell has talked about this in a couple of his books, but others have talked about it too. There was when something is more than the sum of its parts, right? You have the atom bomb, you have the material at which it's being that's being exposed to the destructive force, and there was an extra little oomph that happened, kind of a third unexpected little oomph or element that this bomb meeting the material world was kind of producing. And just studying nuclear technology in itself gets into interdimensionality in a way. And then if you're talking, what if the nuclear bomb could either, this is an old idea, tear a hole in between dimensions, or in a recent discussion he and I have had about plasma, plasma physics and things like that, you could be getting into interdimensionality through the study of the plasma physics, what you understand about the plasma physics. And that's something that that discussion has been around for a while, and particularly during our nuclear age they started getting data on that. So my point is, maybe they have been pursuing not literal serious knowledge, serious pursuit of an understanding of interdimensionality for as long as they've been pursuing anti-gravity, you see. And so we don't know what kind of breakthroughs have been made in the pursuit of our understanding of the multiple dimension question. So
well, that's a theory.
I think that's a whole can of worms that was opened up right there that they probably didn't want to get into.
Well, that whole theory of the H-bomb detonation, and that's what caused these beings that come and visit Earth, the extraterrestrials, is an old theory from these UFO cults. I'm pretty sure that the Heaven's Gate cult mentioned that in their theology, that it was the detonation of the H-bomb that supposedly got these beings interested in what was going on here. And then also, I think from some of Raelian's UFO cult work, they state almost the exact same thing.
But the data I'm talking about predates these UFO cults. Okay, the data that opens up the discussion of the interdimensionality question on a scientific level, that precedes the UFO cults. So when you're talking on the scientific level now, not the cultural level, not the beliefs of the UFO community about interdimensional beings, of which I have discussed, and I'm open to that very much so. The idea of things moving, between dimensions. There again, that's one of those things that you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The stuff from the UFO cults, that's the bathwater. But I think there's a baby in there. I think there's a nugget of something to this.
There could be. There might be. I have to look into it more.
Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors? Is there any evidence that that's what's being?
I like this guy. You didn't get very many questions in, but I like this congressman right here.
Recovered?
Mm-hmm. Not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting.
He just contradicted himself, Walter. That's the biggest contradiction of this entire congressional hearing.
Repeat it. Play it again, if you can. I think it's
not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate.
Okay, hold on. Let me try and get back. This thing's finicky. I don't know where to.
Sorry.
If you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with.
Got to go back through the
example,
multidimensionality. It's all right.
The holographic
always
principle,
a good topic.
Both it derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring? This is
Only a
theory.
theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors? Is there any evidence that that's what's being recovered?
Not to my knowledge, plus the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting of, so.
Would it be?
He just mentioned earlier that the government has craft. That's a direct contradiction to what he just previously said an hour ago.
Yeah. But what was the qualifier? The fact that when he put a time stamp on that, when it was prior to?
And it could have been too that he said that the question was different because this congressman is getting straight to the point. He's asking the question, is there any way that the craft that has been recovered has been developed by the military or by the government? That could be considered a different question,
and
I
Grush is
suppose.
implying no.
Yeah. But him saying earlier that they do have craft that they've retrieved, I don't know. It's kind of back and forth. Maybe different kinds of similar questions, and they're getting really nitty gritty with it. But who knows? We only got like 10 more minutes left. We can rock it out. We can do it, Walter.
Let's do it.
Safe to say that there could be a scenario today where you have an aircraft that crashes and because it's been involved in one program from one federal agency, and but the agency that retrieves it is not aware of that program, and to them it appears alien in origin.
I mean, that's a hypothetical situation. I'm not aware of any historical situation that would match that you described.
Wow.
He is not aware. Again, people note that every time someone says, well, I'm not aware, it doesn't mean there's not. And isn't that interesting? You have a contractor over here developing the this, that, or the other, the weird thing, but you have this one over here, or this government agency that just, or this military unit that's not read into that. So to them, oh my gosh, you could almost argue that point for the Kecksburg UFO. That, of course, the civilians and maybe even the local Army guys who retrieved it, they, to them it was otherworldly.
Yep, I agree.
It's a possibility.
Same with the Roswell event
for
too.
sure.
Yeah,
you know what I think about Roswell.
Absolutely. Yep. Let's keep on rolling.
You're not aware, it has not happened that you're aware of?
That I'm aware of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
There was some honesty from him there. He said that I'm not aware.
You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
That is it. Wow.
Yeah, and again, if I'm not mistaken, my understanding is all this stuff that he said he'd have to talk to you in a skiff about, my understanding is that then when they did follow up, it was determined by the very people he was telling that to, that it's like, okay, yeah, he's got nothing, that it turned out to be.
I mean, out of the words of his own mouth, he says that he got all this information from classified testimony and from interviewing people. He has no
Hearsay.
direct proof, no direct evidence of anything.
Well, I want to know, when he says interviewing, I want to know the context of what he means by that, because there's bringing someone into your office or going to their office and having a room and saying, okay, now I want to discuss with you, a formal interview. And then there's, sitting around the break room, over a cup of coffee or even a beer, hey, and having a casual conversation. That even though from a criminal investigator perspective, yeah, you can apply investigative interview techniques in a casual conversation. He's not somebody that did that for a living. So when I say a casual conversation, I mean just what it says. I want to know the context of these so-called interviews.
But you can't know that, Walter. You can't know the people that he talked
Right.
about.
But I want to. Okay, here's the thing. Like when the Congresswoman asked, are we in touch with extraterrestrial civilizations? My personal position on that is, yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable that we've made contact. Therefore, it can't be completely out of the question that maybe we have retrieved a crashed, alien craft or something we shot down. But to me, it's not.
They're not
crazy.
aliens, Walter. They're non-biologicals.
Oh, that's
You're
right.
using the wrong
or they're
terminology.
biologicals. That's what. But I don't think it's unreasonable or crazy to think that we've been in contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Because I think they exist and I think they have come here. It's not that I think that's crazy or that I don't believe they exist. I question what's being presented to us as the alleged evidence, the testimony and stuff. I question in many cases who is presenting this, because there are people with a stake in making such claims. And my conclusion is, with where disclosure is concerned, is, folks, disclosure of something that big is not going to come through anybody in our community. Okay, that's going to be done through much bigger channels than the UFO community. Okay, all these activists in our community that are pushing for disclosure, it's not going to be brought to them to reveal it to the world. Okay, they're not even on the radar of the people who would be in the position who will be doing this. And I have also said, and I still stand by this, those who we want to be disclosed, I think they're driving disclosure. The people from the other worlds are the ones who are driving the disclosure of them. I think they're the ones saying, no, you're not going to tell the world about us. No, you're not going to disclose us. And few people consider that, because they've been brought up. Look, we got a generation now of people who are 25, 30, 40 years old, who grew up on the X-Files, its original run or the reruns, and they grew up on this kind of media. So they really believe that, well, of course, it's working exactly the secrets are kept exactly the way these TV shows and movies say it is. And they're not stepping back to remind themselves, okay, that is fiction. That's based on people's ideas. Maybe it doesn't work that way, because it's not fun to be a grown-up and step out and say, none of this stuff I want to believe in, or it may not be true. It may not be what is or how it is. And that's no fun, so.
Well, I take the kind of the opposite position that you do, Walter. I think that and this is just my personal opinion and my personal thoughts, that we should question if extraterrestrials or aliens or anybody off of our planet even exist. Because
of course, oh no, I didn't say we shouldn't question it. I didn't say that at all. We should question if they exist, because you're right. Us out here, the masses, we're not seeing it. Right.
Right.
I now.
And when are people going to be tired of stories? Walter. That is the problem. That's what this entire community is full of, is just stories and more stories and people talking to people, and they're providing those stories as evidence when there is no evidence, when there is no proof of extraterrestrial life. And that's just the hardcore facts. People can be pissed off at me and debate me all that they want, but there is no proof that these things exist. Right? There are stories that's been regurgitated by theories, by cults, by movies, by TV shows. Right? I think that is where
let me ask you this then. Do you honestly think that this is the that it's reasonable to conclude that this is the only planet with intelligent life on it in the vastness of space?
I don't think it's as scary as what people make it out to be. Right? I would be 100% okay. That would not change my life at all if we were the only beings in the galaxy, right? We're the only planet that could sustain life.
Okay, you find that logical to conclude that?
Well, it's not that it's logical. It's just that I don't see why people don't put that into consideration over something else that has zero proof and zero evidence for it.
Right, because
I'm not saying that I know. I don't know that for a fact, right?
When we look out in space, us average people, we're not seeing these aliens flying around.
Exactly.
Really, right? You know, I get where you're coming from. And yeah, that should be considered. That definitely should be considered, that we are the only planet with life, with intelligent life, with any possibly, you know, we're the only planet with any life, that it's all just, you know, dead mineralogy, you know, chemicals and
I mean, it could be, but people, I think, are afraid of that, and they're scared of that, right? They're scared to think that it's a possibility, right? I'm not saying that it's true. Just like you think that other people think that it's a possibility that the universe is heavily populated.
However, let me throw this at you though, for something for you to consider, personal exercise. There was a time when you could go to certain islands on this world, even continents, when they believed that they were the only piece of land with any living thing, and they didn't believe that there were other continents that would have other people coming to their continent, what we would come to understand as continents, until it happened, until there they were on the shores. And up until that happened, they believed, well, that's it. This is the world. These are the only people in the world. And that's just the way it is, because we haven't seen anyone land on our shores yet. So
and those people could have been mistaken as extraterrestrials from people that weren't a part
you're
of the planet.
missing my that's not my point. That's not my point. You're right. They could have been mistaken. This is not the extraterrestrial thing. This is the logic thing. You had people on either a continent or an island, let's say, you know, who didn't believe that there was any other living intelligent beings anywhere else on this world that they lived on, until those explorers from those other continents arrived. And then they realized, who are these people? Where did they come? It doesn't matter where they thought they came from. The fact is, they didn't believe they existed until there they stood on their shore. And it's perfectly logical that they would assume that, because until they stood on the shore, until they saw something coming from across that sea, what else would they think? So just consider that on a grander scale, it's just that the explorers from elsewhere just haven't maybe hit our shores yet, our planet yet. That's all. Just something to consider.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. It's just people are taking a lot of things on faith and theory.
Oh, people do that all the time, you know.
Yeah, and that's what
religion. That's what religion, organized religion, was designed to take advantage of.
Yeah.
And I'm not an atheist. I just have no trust in organized religion.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think that everything with a healthy amount of skepticism is good for people to rack over in their brains and actually think about, right? I don't really take one side or the other, but when it comes to evidence and proof of extraterrestrials, there is none. So that is something that needs to be taken into consideration and not looked at as as it's real in all these fairy tales and these made up things from all of these people that have prophesied and made predictions about the future, that aliens are going to land next week, it'll be next month, it'll be next year, 20 years from now, and then that date comes and goes and they never land, and then they have to do the switcheroo and figure out something else and turn it into a spiritual thing, right?
To get pedantic about it, if that's the right word, we have to remember, even though there's huge reason, we've been doing it here for a couple hours, to question testimony and hearsay. Testimony is still technically a degree of evidence, even if it's just a tiny little degree of evidence. And there is historically testimonial evidence from all cultures around the world of people coming from space. But we need much more material evidence before we should, take it seriously. You're right from that perspective, but there is historical, that's a whole other discussion,
Well, thanks so much for coming.
It's up to the individual. It's up to the individual to decide for oneself.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Not here to tell people what to believe or what to think. Just let them figure out their own opinions. And I provide my opinion. And if people like it, they like it. If they don't, they don't. Thanks so much for coming on, Walter.
Sure.
I really enjoyed the conversation. I think we got.
Thanks for having me.
I knocked out a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell people where to find you online?
Yes. Come to the Walter Bosley channel at YouTube, and you'll find some great. I do a live stream every Wednesday. And those, of course, are all recorded. You can find all the past ones. I also do special episodes, in between those. And that's at the Walter Bosley channel at YouTube. And also check out walterbosley.com, which is, we're still building a lot of that site, but it's there, it's active. And that's where you can find links to my books and other stuff. So, there we go.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks so much, Walter, for being here. The links to Walter's information will be in the description of this video. Thanks, everyone in the chat. Hope everyone's doing well. What's going on, Kenneth? Sixth Sense, Tim Hudson. Good to see you. How's it going, Gigi? Thanks, everyone, for being here. I'll be back. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well. You never know when I'm going to do these lives. It could be any day. It could be tomorrow. No, it won't be tomorrow. It could be in a couple hours. Who knows? But I'll be back next Thursday with Doomsday Cult Part 7. So be on the lookout for that. Everyone else, enjoy your lovely weekend. See you guys next